You have 30 days to vacate the property or face legal consequences. The words from the HOA president cut through the room like a blade, his smug expression mirrored by the other 4 board members seated beside him. My chest tightened, and I could feel the thrum of my heartbeat in my ears as I stared at the very people who had turned the past few months into a nightmare. They believed they'd cornered us, that would crumble like the other families they bullied out of this neighborhood for daring to question their authority. Then, the meeting room door swung open. Every head turned. My wife stepped in, her navy dress blues pristine, ribbons and service medals shining under the harsh fluorescent lights. The sudden hush in the room was deafening. The president's smug grin vanished, replaced by a pale mask of discomfort. "Apologies for my delay," Jessica said, her voice calm yet commanding, the same voice that directed sailors across oceans. She set her folder on the table and met their stunned stares. "Now, before we address your attempt to evict my family while I'm serving this country, why don't we review exactly which federal laws you intend to violate today?" The color drained from the president's face. This wasn't the confrontation they had prepared for. Before everything unraveled, we'd just been an ordinary family chasing the American dream. "My name's Mark. I work in IT. Jessica is a Navy lieutenant. After years of saving, we finally found our forever home, a beautiful colonial with a neat yard, nestled in a quiet, well-kept neighborhood that boasted great schools for our 2 kids. When we first toured the community, the HOA representatives had seemed reasonable enough. Just a few simple rules to keep property values high, the realtor had said. The dues were high, sure, but they covered lawn care and even access to a community pool. It sounded like a dream. We signed the papers, and Jessica moved in during her shore duty. For a while, everything was perfect. We painted the house in approved colors, swapped out the mailbox for one from the HOA approved list, and even joined the neighborhood watch. We followed every guideline to the letter. Then came her deployment orders. 6 months at sea. 2 weeks after she shipped out, I found the first violation notice taped to our door. Our lawn, they claimed, was half an inch too tall. I mowed that same day, thinking it was just a misunderstanding. But the very next morning, another notice appeared. We'd left our trash cans out 4 hours too long. Then another, and another. Suddenly, every detail of our home was under attack. The kids' basketball hoop, which had been approved before installation, was now non-compliant. The American flag on our porch was improperly displayed. Even the flowers Jessica had planted before leaving were now unauthorized vegetation. I tried to reason with them. "My wife is deployed. I'm managing 2 kids on my own," I told Karen, the president with a perpetual scowl and a stiff, helmet blonde bob. She didn't blink. Her thin smile never wavered. "Rules are rules," she said coldly. "We don't make exceptions." As I looked around the neighborhood, it hit me. Other homes had identical basketball hoops, flags, and flower beds. None of them were being cited. We were being targeted. Then came the certified letter. They were fining us $100 a day for continuing violations. The list was absurd. Excessive foot traffic, my kids playing in the yard, blackout curtains in my daughter's bedroom, and an unauthorized vehicle, referring to my father-in-law's truck when he visited to help me with the kids. Within weeks, they claimed we owed over $2,000. I filed a formal appeal for every violation, backing it up with photos showing other board members' homes breaking the same rules. My appeals were denied without explanation. Then things escalated. The next letter accused us of ongoing noncompliance and a disruptive presence within the community. They were moving to place a lien on our house, threatening a forced sale over their fabricated violations. I remember staring at that letter, my hands trembling. They weren't just harassing us anymore. They were trying to steal our home, while Jessica was thousands of miles away, serving her country. And that's when I realized this wasn't about rules, or even fines. This was war. This wasn't just a house. It was our house, The one we'd stretched every dollar to buy so our kids could finally have a stable home after 3 military relocations. We'd poured $30,000 into renovations, and every cent of our savings was tied up here. Between Jessica's deployment pay and my salary, we were just managing to keep up with the mortgage. Since the market had exploded after we closed, being forced to sell would mean losing everything. There was no way we could afford another home in the same district, the one with the therapist helping our son manage his anxiety, the one where our daughter had just made the soccer team. Late at night, once the kids were asleep, I'd sit by my laptop, video chatting with Jessica whenever her ship's signal allowed. They are trying to break us. I confessed one night, my voice raw. I don't even know how to fight this anymore. The pressure was suffocating. I was losing weight, barely eating, barely sleeping. Even the kids could sense the tension. They spoke in hushed voices whenever an HOA inspector showed up to check for violations. I needed her, but she was 7,000 miles away on a destroyer in the Persian Gulf. I bent over backward trying to keep the peace. I hired a landscaping service, repainted trim that didn't need repainting, took down the basketball hoop, and documented every repair with timestamped photos. Each time I sent in proof of compliance, I got silence in return. At one monthly board meeting, I showed up with a folder of evidence proving we'd followed every rule. When I tried to speak during the open comments, Karen shut me down after 30 seconds. "Your time is up," she said, while letting others talk for 5 minutes or more. Later, in the parking lot, I overheard Doug, another board member, mutter to someone, "Military families don't belong here. Always moving, never really part of the community." That night, I called my neighbor Steve, who'd been in the neighborhood for over a decade. His voice dropped to a whisper. "They've done this before," he said. "They single families out, pile on fake violations until people give up and leave. Nobody fights because the legal fees cost more than packing up and starting over." That was the moment I realized playing nice wasn't going to work. 3 days later, another envelope appeared on our door. This one bore the HOA's embossed seal in cold, legal language. Due to continued violations and outstanding fines, now totaling $3,350, the association is initiating eviction proceedings. You have 30 days to vacate the property or face legal action and additional penalties. They'd even scheduled the final hearing during Jessica's deployment, ensuring I'd have to face them alone. Inside the packet were photos of our house, red circles highlighting violations, so petty they bordered on absurd. A garden hose not wound tightly enough, a patch of slightly faded paint, a child's bike visible from the street. That same day, a process server showed up with paperwork. The land had already been filed with the county. Karen wasn't just trying to intimidate us anymore. She was moving to take our home while my wife was serving her country. I didn't sleep that night. By 3 a.m., fueled by coffee and panic, I was buried in research, combing through every HOA statute and housing law I could find. That's when I stumbled onto something, the Service Member Civil Relief Act. The SCRA provides protections for deployed service members and their families, including safeguards against eviction and foreclosure. What the HOA was doing wasn't just unethical, it might be outright illegal. Digging deeper, I found more ammunition. HOAs have to enforce rules uniformly. They can't pick and choose. So I drove through the neighborhood taking photos of other houses, basketball hoops, flags, garden decor, the same violations they cited us for, including Karen's own home, complete with an unapproved lawn statue and a mailbox that didn't meet regulations. Then came the smoking gun. Buried in our closing documents was a clause stating the HOA could not pursue foreclosure or eviction against families of deployed service members. For the first time in months, a spark of hope flickered. They hadn't just harassed the wrong family, they tangled with federal protections. I called the Navy's Legal Assistance Office, explained the situation, and within hours a JAG officer was on the phone. "They're doing what?" she said, incredulous. "Your wife is on deployment." "Oh, this ends now." She emailed me legal resources on the SCRA and military housing protections, along with a formal letter to the HOA stating their actions were potentially a federal violation. I gathered everything, every notice, every email, every photo proving our compliance, side by side with identical violations ignored at other homes. During Jessica's next secure call, I laid it all out. "I'm coming home," she said without hesitation. But your deployment. Mark, they're trying to take our home, she interrupted, her voice edged with steel. My commander approved emergency family leave. I landed 2 hours before that hearing. I could hear the determination in her tone, the same tone she used during high-pressure missions. They have no idea who they are dealing with, and I'm bringing my uniform. The day of the hearing, everything was chaos. Her flight got delayed, cutting it dangerously close. I paced the living room, reviewing our evidence over and over, the federal law documentation, the neighborhood photos, the HOA's own bylaws contradicting their actions. Then, 3 hours before the meeting, the doorbell rang. Jessica stood there, travel uniform still crisp despite the 30-hour journey, fatigue etched on her face but fire blazing in her eyes. She hugged the kids. I slipped quietly into a chair near the front, alone. Jessica had insisted we arrive separately. She had her reasons, and I trusted her plan. The board rushed through routine agenda items until Karen finally called my name, her voice dripping with satisfaction. Next, we're addressing the continued violations at 742 Oakwood Drive, she announced. The board has documented 27 separate infractions over the last 4 months, with fines now totaling $3,750. A slideshow flashed onto the screen, zoomed-in photos of our home with tiny, nitpicked problems circled in red. As these issues remain unresolved, Karen said smugly, the board will now vote to initiate covenant enforcement, which will require the property to be vacated. I rose to speak, clutching my binder of evidence, but Doug cut me off almost instantly. The time for excuses was months ago, he sneered. This is just a formality before we finalize the vote. The others nodded, certain the outcome was already decided. I had just started my rebuttal when the doors swung open. Every single head turned. Jessica stood framed in the doorway, sharp as a blade in her navy dress blues. Her medals caught the harsh fluorescent light, the gold lieutenant bars on her shoulders glinting like fire. The room froze. She strode forward with crisp, precise steps, each heel clicking sharply against the tile. You could feel the shift in the air, the quiet gravity that comes with authority earned in service. Karen's jaw went slack. Doug shifted uncomfortably. Neighbors instinctively sat straighter. Jessica removed her service cap and set it on the table in front of the board before standing beside me, posture rigid, voice calm but commanding. Lieutenant Jessica Mitchell, United States Navy, she said evenly. I just returned from deployment in the Persian Gulf to address this matter in person. No one spoke. Before you proceed with an eviction vote against a military family during active deployment, she continued, sliding a folder onto the table, allow me to outline the federal laws you are about to violate. Her tone sharpened, but never rose. The Service Members Civil Relief Act clearly prohibits the eviction of military families during deployment without a court order. Additionally, Section 14-3 of your own HOA covenant explicitly states foreclosure proceedings cannot be initiated against the families of deployed service members. She opened our evidence file with practice precision, laying out side-by-side photographs of homes throughout the neighborhood, all displaying the same supposed violations we had been fined for. This, she said, tapping the photos, is selective enforcement. That is discrimination. Under federal law, that places this board in serious legal jeopardy. The room had gone so quiet that even the hum of the fluorescent lights seemed loud. Board members exchanged uneasy glances, their confidence evaporating by the second. Jessica pressed on, her words measured and sharp as steel. I have already consulted with Navy JAG, she said. They are prepared to pursue federal action for violations of the SCIA. That's up to $110,000 in fines per violation and potential criminal penalties. Karen's face drained of color, her composure shattering. Furthermore, Jessica added, her eyes locking on each board member in turn, our attorney is prepared to file a civil suit for housing discrimination unless these fines are immediately rescinded and we are provided written assurance that this harassment will cease. The silence that followed was suffocating. Karen muttered something to the HOA's attorney, who leaned in, whispering rapidly with a face that grew more alarmed by the second. Finally, the lawyer cleared his throat and said, the board needs to deliberate in private. They vanished into a side room for what felt like an eternity, nearly 20 minutes, while neighbors slowly approached us, one after another. "I'm so sorry," an older resident said quietly, squeezing Jessica's hand. "We had no idea they were targeting a military family." When the board finally returned, the shift in their demeanor was obvious. The arrogance was gone. "All fines and violations against your property are hereby dismissed," Karen said stiffly, reading from a paper with trembling hands. And the HOA attorney added quickly, "Any enforcement actions are postponed indefinitely." "The board sincerely regrets any misunderstanding," Karen finished, her voice flat and brittle. But the fallout didn't stop there. Within a week, we received a formal letter of apology. 3 board members, including Karen, abruptly resigned. Then came the news. The county had opened an investigation into the HOA's finances after other residents stepped forward with similar stories. That was 2 years ago. Jessica finished her deployment and, not long after, was promoted. We're still here, in the same house, now under the care of a reformed HOA board that includes 2 veterans who make sure every rule is applied fairly. The old board's downfall became a cautionary tale, studied by HOA management companies across the state. The very next day after the meeting, our neighbors organized a welcome home barbecue in our yard. One by one, people came forward, some apologizing for staying silent, others thanking Jessica for standing up. "You showed us all how to stand up to bullies," our next-door neighbor told us, voice thick with emotion. Later, we learned that at least 3 other military families had been forced out before us. With the help of the Navy's legal team, those families eventually received settlements covering their moving expenses and financial losses. Sometimes, standing your ground isn't just about protecting what's yours. It's about making sure no one else has to